G'day team, back in the flow of the event and really excited to have Alice here today, and she's going to be sharing some wonderful things to do with cooking and reducing our waste and eating more of a plant-based diet. So really excited to have Alice here, and hopefully she's going to be popping on video in a moment, but it's not an easy market to be convincing people to be eating more plant-based alternatives, and she's been a really big figure on television and news and social media. She's really doing some amazing things, and there she is. Thank you so much for tuning in, Alice, and I think we can hear you all good. And there you are, looking fabulous.
Good to be here. And you're right. I think if you'd asked me that 5-10 years ago, is it a hard sell to get people to eat more plants? I would probably say, yeah, but now is the time. It is the time of the veg-forward cuisine. And I can see that in the way that my book, In-Praise of Veg, has been embraced, and in the way that recipes like this one, which I'm going to show you today, the Carrot Top Rigatoni, is being cooked not only in Australia, but all over the world. So I'm going to get straight into it, Barney, because there's a lot to do. So first things first, I've boiled this pot. So you can ask me questions along the way if you want to, but I've boiled this pot of water. It's a salted pot of water that I'm going to use for my pasta later. And then I'm just going to plunge my carrots into here. Stand by. I'm going to plunge the carrots into here for about 20 seconds just to soften the carrot tops, because when you buy carrots that have their tops, a lot of the time that ends up in the compost, but it's very, very usable. This is exactly as you might find a herb like parsley. It's from the same family. So you can use it, but it's just a bit more woody and it's a little bit more bitter. So to mitigate that, all you need is a little bit more salt and something creamy. So we're going to include some pecorino cheese, but if you want to make this fully plant-based, you can just add extra pumpkin seeds or pepitas and extra salt as well. So that's going back into my salad spinner. The other thing I should say is sometimes you can't find carrot tops to make this recipe, so you can totally just use parsley. And that's fine too. Same ratio for everything else. Now this pot is going to be the same water, waste not, want not, that I'm going to cook the pasta in. So let's pop that back on the cooktop. Got any questions for me yet, Barney?
Wonderful. Thanks for tuning me in. And maybe you could go into a little bit where you've sourced all of these yums from, and just the importance of sourcing ideally organic and local, and maybe just a bit about where you've sourced some of the ingredients that we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. The best place to buy what you consume is as close to the source as possible. So if you can get yourself to a farmer's market, or you can get yourself to the local greengrocer even, then that's going to give you probably a more local way of eating. You heard Matt and Joe talking about the importance of eating local. But here's the thing, I'm a light green kind of person. So if you can't access the farmer's market, there are other ways to do it. So you could join a community supported agriculture scheme where you're supporting a grower, not particularly in your local area, but they might be just out of town, and then they deliver to you on a weekly basis. And when the produce is in season, it's much more sustainable to eat as well. So these carrots, for example, I bought these from a farm gate nearby in Dramana, and they're gorgeous. They're, you know, seasonal duchies. And what I'm going to do is I've left a little bit of these tops on because I'm going to use them like a little handle. And I'm just going to peel strips. This is a really fun thing to do with kids, actually. So just peel strips like this, just with your normal peeler. I said this was zero waste. We're using every last bit of these carrots. So peel, 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 peel. No need to get too precise about the shape of them. And then into some iced water. So in they go into here until we're ready to keep going. Peel, peel, peel. And when I say zero waste, I also say chef snacks, always. So I'm going to keep peeling. Now's a good time for questions, because I'm just going to do this meditative thing, which is actually one of the reasons that I love cooking. You know, these menial tasks are a really good way of switching off and thinking about more important stuff, like the planet, for example, Barney.
Special thing hosting us all. maybe you could, do you have any recommendations on, and I live up in far north Queensland, so the growing cycle is very different there, but do you have any kind
Yes.
of go-to kind of resources to figure out the best seasonally things to plant for the upcoming season, or kind of the veggies to kind of keep an eye out in your local store that will be kind of sourced from greater Melbourne area? Do you have any ideas
Yes.
on how to direct people towards kind of seasonal veg for greater Dandenong and Melbourne at large?
Absolutely. And actually, you've got a great community supported agriculture scheme your way called the Scenic Rim Farm Box. That would be, you know, if anyone is tuning in from Queensland, that would be the one that I'd recommend. But there are so many resources online. If you just search seasonal ingredients Australia, not only will you get access to what's in season, but you'll also get ideas for recipes. So that's really great as well. In terms of local kind of spots in the greater Dandenong area that you could visit, I mean, if you think about, you're right near, you know, towards the Dandenongs, there are some great growers and producers out that way. So supporting local cheese makers and local kind of growers of produce is a really good way of ensuring that you've got access to this stuff straight on your doorstep.
Wonderful. And any kind of inspiration or thoughts? And I know we just heard from Greenhouse with Jost and the two residents there, but is there a kind of a community garden hub in
Yes,
in Melbourne, or any kind of
totally.
where people can go and visit around Melbourne that are really showing us how it's done?
It's actually really exciting to me because what the pandemic did is it forced people to think about growing their own. One of the first things that started to disappear was seedlings, seeds and seedlings. And once they bought all the seeds and seedlings, they started buying up little saplings and little trees. So it just goes to show that, you know, when our food sources are threatened, it drives us to find new ways to do things. So do seek out a community garden, and if you can't find one and you've got the time and inclination, think about setting one up yourself. I just visited Queenscliff last week, and there's a fantastic permaculture community garden out there that was just set up by the residents as a result of the pandemic. So, you know, and Ben, who I was chatting to there, Ben Shaw, who set it up, he said everything happened so fast because we were all so motivated. So if this inspires you, and I should say, you know, you're right with the leading questions, growing your own carrots. Carrots are probably one of the harder things to grow if you want nice straight ones, but growing your own produce is such a rewarding way and such a guaranteed way that you're eating seasonally, you're treading softly on country, and that you are getting the most out of everything that you know is on your little plot of land.
And it's great.
I'm going to keep going with these.
In half an acre, you know, you can just produce so much food. If you've got good soil and raised beds, it's amazing.
100%. And 1,000 Acres is actually a really good resource. Now you've reminded me. 1,000 Acres, if you check them out online, they've got some ideas for community gardens. Have you got favourite resources that you like to use, Barney?
I think it's more just within far north Queensland. It's the local kind of Rusty's Market is a sort of community. Yes. You can just basically ask anyone anything there. So that's more of an in-person place that you can come and learn from the tablelands and seeing what's happening up there. But, you know, Mariba just released, you know, data points compared to 2016 to 2020, and the avocados boomed and blueberries, and that kind of shows what the marketplace is doing in regards to crops for far north Queensland. And I think some of the hydro and for, you know, we're very lucky with our weather in England, but if you're in Europe, you know, there's some pretty remarkable things going, and Singapore, you know, there's some remarkable things going with vertical grow systems and being able to produce food even in the dead of winter in Sweden, which is pretty exciting.
Phenomenal. And I think the thing that's exciting to me with growers, even big conventional growers, is that they are looking to be more sustainable in their practices and in how they process all of that food, because they recognise that actually the climate is what makes sure that they have a livelihood as well. So, you know, I just helped open an 8-star facility for apple growers, and they've got sort of the, you know, the way that they're looping the energy reserves that they have, the vertical storage that they have is 60% more, what's the word I'm looking for, efficient They've got lots of natural light, so they don't have to use as much electricity. And then the energy that they use for cooling the apples is also the energy that they use for processing them. So it's lots of, really exciting stuff. And they mentioned as well, in terms of their input of their water, they're recycling the water that they use. So they've got, I think about 500 litre water tanks. Wow. And then they're saving about 3 million litres of water a year. It's really exciting. Okay, and they're the sort of apples that you can buy from the supermarket. So, I think one thing that's really important for us to remember, Barney, and I'm sure that you've come across this as well, is like we can often talk in a real kind of bubble, in our foodie and sustainable bubble, about what it means to be sustainable, but we need to bring people into the conversation, which is why it's so exciting that we get to have conversations at festivals like today's, where lots of people can tune in who might be coming to sustainability for the first time and really want to find ways to do things that don't feel like they're going too far away from what they're already doing, but make their lives easier and make them feel like their footprint's a little bit lighter as well.
Wonderful. Well, I don't want to ask too many questions if you need to flow into the next question, but why the cold water with the carrots?
Oh, great question. So that kind of, I'll wait till I turn it off. The cold water helps to refresh the carrots and makes them really, really crunchy and crispy. This is actually a really good question, because you can do this even if you're not cooking those carrots. So you can do this with all sorts of vegetables that are looking a little bit sad, a bit worse for wear, and it brings them back to life. So things like radishes, often radishes can start to get a little wilty and sad. So put them into iced water. Same goes with celery, with asparagus, anything that really is quite water dependent. Put it in iced water and it goes straight away. Now, speaking of things I need to do, I need to get onto this pesto. So I've got my carrot tops over here. The carrot tops are nice, and you can see the colour is nice and bright and vibrant. That's what the blanching's done. And then you can chop it. See how it's much woodier. So I might actually chop this. Okay. Chop that into here. And then I do have a little bit of parsley. I had some sad looking parsley in my crisper. So in that goes as well. And if you can, growing herbs is a really great kind of gateway to growing your own food. So I'd highly recommend that. And then into this pesto will go pepitas or pumpkin seeds. And you might be able to see these pepitas, which I've toasted, just a nice hot pan, make the pan quite hot, but then turn it off and let the pepitas toast, and you can see the colours. That one's going to be for garnish later. These ones are just fresh and raw. Then I've got some pecorino cheese, which is kind of like Parmesan. You can totally use Parmesan in this as well. And the thing I wanted to show you about this is these the skin, the rind of the pecorino and Parmesan cheese, make sure that you hold on to those, pop them in your stock, or put them into your risotto, and it really helps to flavour up the mix. So that's the little skins there, the rinds. Then we've also got garlic going in. The recipe says 2, but I always say no matter what the recipe says, always add more.
Yeah, I love the garlic.
All about it. And then olive oil, and I'm just going to keep a little bit of this olive oil to finish the dish. So that's good. It's half a cup. Then I've got a lemon. I want to show you using your whole lemon, really making full use of it means, there we go, squishing it, because that helps to release the juice. Mm-hmm. Then in goes the lemon zest. Zest your lemon before you juice your lemon. It's much easier. You can see why, because I've squished this lemon a little bit too hard. It's just making it a bit harder to zest, but that's okay.
What does zest mean?
The zest is like the rind of the lemon. So see how I'm using a microplane or a grater just to zest. It's the zest of life. They talk about the zest of life. To me, it's the best bit of the lemon. It's the bit that you put into cooking, and then the juice is, what you can finish with. So there we go. Zest and, oh yeah, lime zest, delicious. Nice. That goes in here as well. So see, because I squished it, there's a lot more juice that you can get out of it. If you just try and juice a lemon without pressing it on the bench first, it just won't be as juicy.
Can't have that.
No, we cannot have that. Okay, so at this point, I am going to pop a little bit of salt and pepper, actually. It can go in there as well. Terrific. How's that looking, Barney?
Wonderful. The double camera angle. We're getting the bird's eye view here.
Yeah, all about it. Okay, so the lid is on. I'm going to press go, and then we're just going to blitz this. And while I blitz, I'm going to turn on the pasta water because we're almost ready to start bringing it all together. All right, how's that looking? Let's have a look. So again, because carrot tops are a little bit woodier than your regular kind of rocket or herb in here, you do need to kind of squish it down a little bit if need be. There we go. And keep blitzing. And then when it's done, it's going to look a little something like, I'm going to see if I can do this with the 2-camera magic. You ready?
All right.
Yes. So that's the color and the texture of the pesto that you're after. It's just absolutely brilliant, nutty, garlicky, herby and zesty. Nice. Any kind of, and the bitterness of the carrot tops, which is what people complain about, is mitigated by blanching them and adding salt and creaminess. So that is delicious. So now we've got our pesto ready to go. We've got our carrots peeled and ready to go. So really what we're waiting for is for the water to boil and the pasta to go in. That's going to be 4 to 6 minutes. So we've got some more time to chat. So let's talk about other ways that we can be a bit more sustainable in the kitchen. For example, storage. That's one thing. You know, there are a lot of people that are storing their veg, fruit, and even other goods less efficiently than they could. Like, for example, Barney, I know you're doing this very well. How are you storing your herbs?
The herbs, everything goes into the bottom box.
Right.
And then, for example, chives or sprouts, if they're starting to wilt, I snip them and then put them in a little bit of shallow water and just let them sit in some water.
Love it. See, I knew you'd know the answer to this. And that's the thing, because I think the best way to think about herbs is like any kind of flower. So if your herbs are looking a little bit sad, a bit worse for wear, all you need is to pop it into water, into a vase, essentially, and it'll come back to life. Now, I've got my rigatoni ready to go. Rigatoni is this shape here. It's kind of like a bit like a macaroni, actually, like a big macaroni. And that's going to really absorb the sauce into each of those little grooves. So that's going to go into the water for 4 to 6 minutes.
And while if we have time for just one question, which they're kind of linked, but you know, maybe just shedding your perspective on the importance of you know, moving towards more of an organic culture and reducing the amount of intense herbicides and pesticides, and you know how that links back to having healthy soil, having healthy, you know, mycelium networks, microbiome, and how you know, that doesn't
speaking my language.
But that what we do out on the farm affects this moment of preparing food and indeed eating it. So maybe anything on that would be wonderful.
100%. For a long time, and certainly through the industrial age, we've been moving slowly more and more towards monocultural agriculture, which means, you know, a lot of monocropping, growing a lot of corn in one area or growing a lot of potatoes. And that's all that a farmer would be growing, because that was all that the supply, the demand was there for that. And so they were thinking, well, if we supply that, then we can just make our dosh and do it. But actually a lot of growers are moving towards regenerative agriculture, which is recognizing that the quality of the soil makes a huge difference to the produce that they sell. And not just the produce that they sell, but the flavor, that the actual taste of that produce, because taste, this is research is coming out to show that taste is nutrition. So the reason why something tastes good to us is because it's full of nutritious vitamins and minerals that food has picked up from the soil. So ways that growers can be more regenerative is by growing different things at different seasons and having companion planters or companion growing where they're putting nutrients back into the soil. We've actually got a project coming out, Barney, which I think you're going to love, which is specifically looking at Melbourne's food bowl and the Regen Ag projects that are moving, pushing the needle. And it's all for kids to see, sort of middle school to sort of year 9 and 10, to explore that area and to see the burgeoning technologies that are coming through. So as a foodie, as somebody that loves food, it's really important to me that we do think sustainably about the way that we grow our food, because I'm all about taste. So coming back to that, tastes better if it grows better.
And what was the name of that, Alice, just so we can keep an eye out for that program?
Oh, yes. It's called the Virtual Food Bowl, Melbourne's Virtual Food Bowl. I'm actually going to get Nick to put the link for you into the chat. It hasn't come out yet, so it's not live, but I'll make sure to email you so that you can have a look. I'll send it to you on LinkedIn. You're going to love it. It's very cool. And it's exciting, I think, actually, that councils and government organizations are getting behind this stuff and putting money where the mouth is, because they're recognizing that this is what people want to know more about, and this is the way that they can continue to kind of contribute positively to conversations like this. So this rigatoni is starting to look really good.
Bit of a dad joke in there, money where your mouth is, because you're feeding people.
All about it. I make that dad joke so often that I don't even notice that it's a dad joke anymore.
And just
I'm like, oh yeah.
While you're in your flow over there, I'd love to, where we're in Dandenong and indeed most of the world, we're all very busy and bouncing between life. And I find that, I manage a charity, I'm doing a lot of things up in Queensland, and I sometimes either don't have time to cook or I don't make time. And so maybe just linking your philosophy and ethos of, reducing waste, but to bring that into meal planning and meal
Yes, the best way to save time is actually to embrace your leftovers. So cook more, and then you can have it the next night in a different iteration. And before you go out and buy something new, check your fridge and make sure that what you have already can't be used in what you're planning to make. I'm all about substitutions in my recipes. I like to call them serving suggestions, because, again, if you don't have carrot tops, you can use parsley or basil. If you don't have pepitas, you can use pine nuts or sunflower seeds. There's so many different ways that you can make a similar dish. And that comes down to skills and knowledge. It comes down to flying hours. I spend a lot of time in my kitchen, so I know how to substitute this and that off the top of my head. But if you're not sure, don't feel like this is not something that you can do. We live in the information age. Check it out online. You're here on Facebook now. Ask your friends if you want to, or just go and search it out on a search engine. Type in the ingredients that you have left in your crisper and recipe and see what comes up. Because you might find that, oh, okay, well, I've got all of those ingredients. I've never made this before. I'll just follow this recipe, and it'll become second nature, and it'll become something that you cook all the time.
Is there a go-to website that you can plug in all your recipes, all of your ingredients? And plugs out a recipe to do?
It's so funny, because I'm often contacted by people saying that they're doing things like this. I've not yet found one that I love. And so that's why I still just Google it. But if I want a really reliable recipe, BBC Food, coming back to basics, BBC Food, those recipes always work.
Cool.
Now, Barney, and you would know BBC Food very well, being from the UK yourself. So I've got my pasta water. This is going to help thicken up my sauce. I'm going to get my pasta, drain it through through a colander once my pasta water is reserved, and then we're ready to assemble. There we go. Excuse the view for a brief moment. Terrific. Okay.
The weather's lovely outside, at least, not grey and hailing.
Yeah, oh yes, exactly. It's definitely a lovely sunny day out there. Our 2-year-old's gone off to the park with my parents, so she's living her best life as well. Now, into this pan goes the remainder of the olive oil. There we go. our carrots, our pesto, and the pasta water. We really are moving towards the end of this recipe. Hey, notice this flexible spatula that I'm using? Talk about no waste. This is the way to get every last skerrick of food out of a bowl. There we go. And then in goes the pasta water to loosen everything off. And it looks like, wow, that looks really wet. But what happens is that it actually all starts to absorb together and get nice and creamy and juicy.
Oh, I'm getting hungry.
Good, that's my job. So let's see, I might actually use tongs for this. Now we've got 5 minutes to go. So if you've got any questions, pop them into chat. Barney can always feed them back to me. But if you've got any questions about other things, you know, I'll often have people contacting me on my socials saying, hey, I've got a couple of mangy looking whatevers, what do I do with it? And I'm more than happy to answer the question because it's all about that community. And I'll often ask my friends, you know, what do you do with this? And they'll have great solutions for me as well. So let's get the heat going. Oh, this looks yum.
What would be three ingredients that you would recommend people to avoid and 3 ingredients that you would encourage people to use?
Okay, avoid ingredients. It depends on the time of year. So let's say what I would say is, okay, my friend Nat's what I reckon says it best, jar sauce, F it off. You don't need it. All you need is, you know, the closer to the source, the ingredients on the back of the packet, the better those ingredients are, and that jar is going to be. So let's say it's a curry paste. If it's the sort of stuff that you would probably put in a curry paste yourself, you don't have the time to make that curry paste and you don't want to buy, you know, a big knob of ginger, all of those things, and you worry that it might go to waste. Sure, great, use a jarred curry paste. But if you look on the back of the packet and it's full of emulsifiers and processed ingredients, then F it off, you don't need it. Nat is going to watch this and laugh so hard. I'm being PG here. So there we go. This is looking gorgeous and it's ready to come out of the pan. So let's do this on the 2-cam so you can see it come out.
Oh, no.
Money shot. Beautiful. And then you finish that off with some more grated Parmesan. And actually what I did, speaking of zero waste, is once I zested the lemon, I actually used the same zester to zest the Parmesan. And in that way, all of those last little bits of lemon zest came off my microplate as well. And I didn't have to worry about losing any to the sink. And then the pepitas, the toasted pepitas go on top. I'm going to give it one last drizzle of olive oil for good measure. There we go. And one last crack of pepper. And Barney, that is the Carrot Top Rigatoni from In-Praise of Veg. If you haven't got the recipe, I'll make sure that that recipe is shared with you all so that you can make this at home. And remember, again, if you don't have your carrot tops, you can use parsley or basil, or, you know, you could probably stretch this even to using dill in a pesto quite easily. If you don't have the pepitas, you can use pine nuts or walnuts or sunflower seeds. And, you know, if you don't have rigatoni, use whatever spaghetti you want. There you go. You've got the recipe available to you as well. Please do cook it. Please do tag me at Alice in Frames. I'd love to see you cook this. I'd love to see your iteration. And really, I just love to see you cook. So whatever it is that you're putting up, show me what you're cooking. I love the inspiration and I just love the community that we get online. Barney, thank you so much. I feel like we've really, you know, we're very simpatico, and I hope to see you cook this as well.
I'll definitely be out there. I'm not going to have to find a alternative to the cheese, but everything else I can put in there. And I think we've actually got a few more minutes because you flew through an efficient kitchen warrior.
Wonderful.
Maybe we could just share a bit more on some things to encourage, because I know that you know, a lot of people go around and have tummy problems. For a long time I was eating too much processed food, and I got, you know, candida, and I got all of the tummy problems from too much processed wheat and too much processed food. And so maybe just, some helpful tips to eat healthy, but without breaking our wallets.
Totally. So that sounds like you went back to basics and did some cooking from scratch. So thinking about adding some new legumes to your life, always really great for prebiotic gut health. So things like chickpeas or beans are really fantastic. Quinoa, is terrific as well. There's a Tasmanian grower of quinoa that's really great. Look at the back of the packet as well and where it's made. And as much as possible, I'm always looking at the bar to show how many of those ingredients are Australian, because the more Australian ingredients and the closer to that 100%, the more that we're supporting our local food ecosystem, but also the food miles we're keeping down as well. You mentioned the candida, that often comes through excess sugar. And again, when there's too much stuff going on a processed packet, chances are that it's the sugar and the salt and the high fructose corn syrup and the canola oil, if not palm oil, that's being added to that stuff to make it more appealing for us to eat. But actually, when we come back to how we feel 5-10 minutes after we eat it, that's the real, to me, that's the kicker. So when I think about what I'm eating, I'm not necessarily saying, oh, what's healthy for me or what's good for me. I'm just thinking, what food makes me feel good? And when I come back to that, then it is this sort of food. Vegetables, I'm not even vegetarian. I would say we're veg forward. We're 80% veg, 20% the other stuff. And the reason for that is because vegetables make me zing. They're cost effective, they're full of color, they're full of life, particularly when they're in season, and particularly when I know the grower, or, I've gone to the farm gate, I've done that shop myself. I feel more connected to the food that I'm cooking and eating, and I feel like I'm connecting with my family more because I've got stories to tell about the food that's on the table.
Especially when it's straight off the vine. For me, a fresh capsicum in the sun, there's nothing like it. And we've got a few more minutes, and maybe I think that in regards to a campaign that wasn't the smartest thing, I think that meat Mondays, I feel like people don't like that because you're losing out. And I think, new recipe Tuesday or whatever alternative way to frame that is, I know that a lot of people eat 3 meat meals a day, but, all of us need to go vegan tomorrow by any means. But what would you do to just be encouraging for people to explore, more plant-based alternatives and to not, cut meat and beef and all of this stuff out, but just consider some of these other things?
That's a really good point, Barney, because I think that for a lot of people, it's kind of like one thing is not the other thing. And, oh, well, I'm not vegan or vegetarian, so this is not a conversation for me. But actually, if you start with the veg, and everybody can do that, you'll just naturally reduce your meat consumption, and you'll be a little bit more conscious perhaps of the fact that you're saving money so you can buy better quality animal proteins, or you can seek out your local butcher rather than going for the easy kind of going to the shops and buying the cheap cuts of meat. But having said that, cheap cuts of meat in the sense of secondary cuts, if you are going to eat meat, think about eating those cuts rather than just sort of sticking to the primary. So I'm talking about the stuff that takes longer to cook. Now we're coming into pressure cooker and slow cooker season. So if you are going to cook meat, consider getting some secondary cuts, cooking them up for the week and having it for 1 meal a day, and a little bit. You actually will be surprised how little animal protein you need on the plate when you start with the veg and when you think about adding more color to your plate. Otherwise you're kind of, if you think about the plate as a canvas and you're coloring with the food on that plate, if you're just coloring with meat, then it's quite a brown looking plate. But if you're coloring with the rainbow of colors available to you through the vegetable kingdom, then it's going to be a much more delicious plate of food. And if you do feel like you miss out, one thing about meat and animal proteins is the umami flavor, the savoriness. So you can really pick that back up with things like mushrooms. They've done studies that show that if you add a cup of mushrooms into less mince, what happens? So let's say instead of having a kilo of mince, you have 500 grams of mince and a cup or two of mushrooms, because they do shrink down. People don't miss it. They just assume that everything is as meaty as it was because of that umami that's naturally found in mushrooms. You mentioned the mycelium kingdom before, that's the mushroom kingdom. In the mycelium network under the ground. If we're supporting our mushroom growers, we're supporting our soil, we're supporting that third kingdom that is bringing us life. and connecting us together. Gosh, we've got so much more that we could say, Barney. It's like, this is just scratching the surface, quite literally. This is the fruit of the mycelium conversation. There's a lot more under the surface to discuss.
And we can grow fake meat with mushrooms. It's amazing. Some of the burgers and, all of these, alternative meat substitutes. At one in San Francisco, it was a demo. It literally bled, tasted, and like meat. It was amazing. I've never seen anything. The Impossible Burgers are one thing, but this was a lab-grown steak, and I'd never seen anything like it. And it tasted as, I don't eat beef, but it tasted like meat. It was amazing.
Yeah, and even, the cell-based meats, is that the ones that you're talking about there, Barney? I
think that was who they, and the average person who enjoys their weekly steak, you put that and a pretty not high class steak in front of them, I would say they, for the most part, choose that alternative meat. Even if you told them that they were both beef, they would still think that was a better meat in their mind, which is amazing. And on a final note, you're a very positive, light, wonderful human. I appreciate all of your energy. But what's something, hopeful that you would like to share? Maybe not just in how we're feeding ourselves, but what you're seeing in Australia, what you're seeing around the world. What's the kind of hopeful thing that you would like to share that kind of gets you out of bed in the morning and puts a smile on your face?
It is exactly that question. What their sphere of influence? There are a lot of people within what it is that they do and those areas that they can control. If you look at the state of the planet as a whole, from above, and you think, wow, what the heck are we supposed to do here? It can feel really overwhelming. Whereas when you ask the question, what the heck can I do with the facilities that I have and with the network of people that are around me, then that's when hope can come, and change will only come through hope. If we are dejected and pessimistic, I'm really excited and inspired to meet people like you, the other people that are doing really cool stuff within the food, science space, and the growers that are doing sustainable things as well. So I'm very hopeful, and that hope is hopefully what I convey through these kind of demonstrations. So, thanks for picking up what I put down, Barney.
Well, thank you very much, Alice, for your time, and I hope your family get to enjoy that delicious meal once your 1-year-old gets a sunny stroll. And we'll definitely, we've got all of your links in Alice in Frames and all of the things. So I'm sure we can send your recipes and send your inspiration out to lots of people tuning in. So big hugs from Melbourne, and hope to catch up soon.
Wonderful.
Excellent. Well,
big hugs to FNQ right back, and enjoy the rest of the festival, everyone.